Thank you for tuning in to the Fridays from the Farm from the Fox and Crow Farm in New Hampshire, our podcast series for the month of March, Women in Farming. I'm so excited to bring this amazing topic to the forefront of our March podcast series. I have the privilege of knowing so many women in the farming industry. These are not your typical women, and they're not your typical farmers either. These are bust your ass, full time working wives, moms, career executives, and dedicated land stewards and animal lovers. We dig in deep about their lifestyle, marriage and relationships, family life, their careers beyond the farm, and their farm and farm business. How did they start? Where do they want to go? And how will they get there? We will share stories of success and failure and talk about the emotional impact farming has had on their bodies, mind, and soul. Join us for this motivating and inspiring journey with some of the toughest women in New Hampshire from our Fridays from the Farm March series, Women in Farming from New Hampshire. I want to thank everybody for joining us on our Fridays from the Farm. This is the podcast series from the Fox and Crow Farm in Barnstead, New Hampshire. The month of March, we're actually talking about women in farming. And today we're going to be joined by Nancy Mangs up in Sanbornton, New Hampshire. She's going to share with us her story and her business, Wild Berry Farm in Sanbornton. So thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us today.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. So I always like to start the series kind of, give everybody a little bit of an introduction, or not even a little bit. Tell us about your life before the farm, and you can go back as far as you feel comfortable.
We are relatively new to farming. We moved to New Hampshire about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I had gardens and I loved the gardening. I never grew up gardening, though. This was new. I didn't start gardening until I had children and I needed a hobby to do at home. And then we had horses when we came from Connecticut, and we had horses because my daughter was into horseback riding, and I always wanted a horse, but never lived in a situation where that could happen. So I was really happy to get her into horseback riding and then to have a horse that she could ride. I didn't necessarily want to ride it. Um, and so I just loved taking care of animals. I loved being in the dirt, digging, growing things, eating my own food. And I will say, prior to that, part of my love of farming is that my uncle is a farmer in New Hampton. He's 93 years old today. Not today isn't his birthday, but he is 93 years old. And he had a dairy farm when I was growing up, and we used to help him. We used to muck the stalls with him. We thought that was great fun. And we used to, feed the cows. And then he went from dairy to beef. And he also has always done maple syrup. And so it was, just always, the whole family, that's where we went for vacation. We never went to the tourist things. We just went up to the farm and we ran around. And that's where my memories from real farming come. And I think that's where my love of horses, because they always had a horse. They always had all different kinds of animals, but their focus was on dairy first and then beef and the maple syrup. And I loved the lifestyle. I really loved the fact that they just woke up and they did what they needed to do. They were busy all the time. I like to be busy. And there was just a sense of serenity around that lifestyle that I wanted. So fast forward to where we are today. When my husband and I were thinking about retiring, we wanted to do something that would keep us busy. My husband is in it for the tractors. I will say that.
And
He
all the
will.
PTO equipment that goes with it.
Exactly. So that was the carrot in front of the on the stick for him. And he is so happy to be up here with a tractor. But we decided we wanted to farm. We looked for 2 years before we found the farm that we really wanted. And I will say that it's much bigger than anything that we had expected. We were thinking around 30 acres, some chickens, maybe some horses. We thought about doing a horse rescue, but we found this farm, we loved it, and we ended up working with it. Um, it took a lot of work because it was pretty overgrown. We have wild blueberries, and they're the high bush, and they are not, they're somewhat cultivated in that they're not the low bush, but they grow wild, and they aren't in any order. They're wild. They just kind of grow where they sprouted. And so it took a lot of work when we first moved here. There was a lot of buckthorn and invasives. What's that other one? The bittersweet was
Mm.
all over the place, and we did it all by hand. And of course, again, my husband Pete was there with the tractor, so he was he's like,
Thank
"Oh,
goodness.
we need a log splitter. Oh, we need a chipper. We need a this." So that's kind of how we got here. We did get the sheep because I wanted an organic way to deal with the weeds, to maintain the weeds, because basically I'm kind of lazy. I like to keep busy, but I also like to find the easiest way to do something. So we got these little baby doll sheep to eat under the bushes, but we soon found out that they can climb.
Oh,
Not climb like a squirrel, but they can stand up on their hind legs. So they ended up eating the bushes. So that didn't last very long. But they were so cute. And when people come to pick berries, we just kept them. So that's how we ended up with sheep.
so let's go back. So where were you guys in Connecticut?
So we were in the New Haven area. I actually worked at Yale University doing web design and development for the various departments within the university.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was sitting at a desk all day.
Right. I mean, were you already kind of living in a rural or agricultural setting, or were you guys kind of in a urban setting?
We were in a relatively rural area. We actually had, my daughter's horse actually lived on our property. So
Mm.
we had 5 acres, which is a lot in where we were. We went from living on a quarter of an acre to getting 5 acres. Um, and it was kind of the same scenario. We didn't intend to get a horse, although I did, but I didn't tell Pete about it until we got the tractor. Um, and there was this piece of land that was kind of overgrown, and we cleared it out, and it was the horse couldn't graze. Of course, we had to have 2 horses. He couldn't graze, um but it was enough that we knew what it would take to take care of animals. We knew that it was a full-time commitment. We knew that we couldn't just take off and go away for a weekend without somebody there who knew about horses.
Hmm.
So it was rural enough, and we grew quite a bit of food that I canned a lot of it in a small, urban kind of garden. It wasn't a field. We lived in the woods basically, so we had to create the space for the garden. But um, it was a little mini farm, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've worked your whole career. You and your
Yeah.
husband worked your whole career. You kind of have this cute little hobby farm going on, and you think, oh, for retirement, we want something like quadruple size with way more responsibility, work, and obligation. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, kind of. We didn't we didn't plan on 115 acres. We were looking for a smaller 30 acres, enough to pasture a horse, or something. And we found this place, and we kind of grew into it.
Mm.
I mean, I think that's part of what our adventure is really been about, is that um, I mean, I had never even picked a blueberry before. I never, went apple picking. We lived near a place that did it. So I will say that. And we used to watch what they did every year. We lived across the street, basically, from uh, at least a 10-acre raspberry farm. And so we used to see what they did every year. And we were intrigued by it, and just kind of um, the way that things happened. but we had never really had our hands in it. But we loved the property, and we really didn't want to destroy what was already here.
Mm.
The blueberries that were here, we had some people come and look, and they said, just mow it all down and start fresh. But we really like, look, we're good at looking at something and building something from what already exists. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we ended up here.
Yeah. Well, we'll find too. So, in the couple of other podcast series that we've done, and this really is an important message, I think, for a lot of our aspiring farmers that are listening or watching. So, you guys, you took this existing landscape, you went there with a complete open mind, and you allowed that landscape to kind of shape what you were doing and how you were doing it. And then I've noticed too, in the time that I've known you, even the product that you've produced from the farm has evolved and changed to kind of meet the needs of what you've done. And we'll talk about that more, but I think the important takeaway for anybody that's thinking about getting into this, it's not like you woke up one day and said, I want, dozens of sheep and I want to manicure, 15 acres of blueberries and do endless amounts of weeding. You literally allowed that landscape to provide that lifestyle and that culture. Am I right?
Yes, yes, that's exactly it. We knew we wanted to farm. We didn't know exactly how that would manifest itself, but we were open to what we found. Yeah, I mean, we had to, for the sheep, we had to redo all the fencing because the person before us had cows, cattle, and horses, so we had to redo all the fencing. We are also now in the process of, we planted raspberries last year, so we're expanding it to what it had. And yeah, because we just loved the property.
Mm.
Um, and we just, it was, we knew we could make it work, but I think that is an important message for people, that it doesn't necessarily, like, I'm really big on setting goals, but I can't set a goal that says, because again, originally we thought we were going to have a horse rescue,
Mhm.
and we had a couple of horses when we came here, and we realized that it was just going to be too much at our age. It was going to be too much work. Yeah, so we just kind of let it evolve.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what brought you to New Hampshire?
What brought me to New Hampshire is basically family. Like I said before, we spent as kids, I spent my summers, um, with my family, my uncle. We would go up to the farm, my uncle and my cousins. I'm very close with them. They're kind of like brothers, my cousins. And my uncle is like a second father. And we came up here when we had our kids. We did the same thing. We would come up and we would uh, come up for vacations and for weekends.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always been like my second home. And when our kids graduated from high school, we really felt more connected in New Hampshire than we did in Connecticut.
Mhm.
So that's why we chose to come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the current farm that you have. Let's talk about Wildberry Farm. And from the day you bought it and you started doing all the land clearing, what sort of evolutionary things have happened since then?
Well, so we've improved the land quite a bit. I think, number one, we have fencing, which took us a long time to figure out because sheep really do require secure fencing. They have to have at least 5 strands, and we tried to do it with the temporary fencing, which is great. Temporary fencing is great until the winter, and it doesn't work anymore. So the first thing that we had to do, and we were very, very lucky, I have to say, we're very lucky that we got in contact with a lot of people who helped. One is Jared, but we had a guy come to help us with the fencing, and he said, forget about the fencing of the pastures. The first thing you need to do is secure them for the winter. And
Hmm.
he set up an area where the sheep which is predator free, so the sheep don't have to worry about predators getting in the winter. Um, and then we tried various ways to do the fencing for the pastures, and finally did some high tinsel uh, fencing with 5 strand, which my husband Pete and actually did with Jared, um, to secure the animals. So now we have 3 pastures, 3 good-sized pastures where we can rotate the sheep. And so that not only keeps the pastures down and keeps it free of invasives, but it also keeps the sheep really healthy because they're not on those same pastures. We have cleared the original blueberry field and also the back blueberry field, which actually had pine trees and birch trees growing out of it. So we've cleared that. We've the back pasture, which we pasture other people's animals on in the spring, summer, and fall. We've gotten rid of all the invasives on that. And as I said, we have started to plant raspberries, and we're going to plant blackberries this spring.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're just a quick question before we take a quick break, and we'll come back to this topic 'cause there's just not enough time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know that the property has wild blueberries. You invest the time to manicure the land and salvage the berries. And then you decide to get into the sheep to manicure the berries and the land that you guys have just cleared, but the sheep didn't work out. And now you become sheep farmers. um, so what's it sounds like the sheep do have an important role, right? They're keeping that invasive weed species down and all the other stuff. What else are you doing or you're planning with the sheep?
Well, so originally I was going to sell the baby dolls as pets, and that worked sort of. Um, but it was hard because they needed to be registered, and then in order to be registered, it it was more complicated than what I wanted to deal with. So we sold them as pets, but not as registered. And then I tried to sell them as meat, but I really had a hard time with it. I just, I mean, I'm not a vegetarian, so I understand eating meat, but it was just, maybe it's because baby dolls are really cute. And so now what I'm doing is I'm transitioning into fiber, and I'm working to get a more fiber friendly flock. The baby dolls aren't known for their fiber, but I've been able to use the wool for things like dryer balls and felted soap. So they can pay for their food that way.
Yeah.
But but I am kind of phasing them out as I find homes for them. I'm phasing them out and bringing in more sheep with better fiber, so that I can either sell it for wool, yarn, uh, anything, just raw. A lot of people just want raw fleece.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, we're gonna break for a quick moment, and then we'll be right back. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right, sure. All right, thank you guys for coming back to the Fridays from the Farm, our March podcast series, Women in Farming. Today, we're actually meeting with Nancy Mangs out of Wildberry Farm in Sanbornton, New Hampshire. We were just talking before we took a break about the baby doll sheep and the use of the fibers, and now the fact that you guys are expanding into the fiber business. And I love this dialogue because it really does show every farmer has evolved or changed, or you're just open and receptive to what the community's needs are and meeting those. um and so this fiber thing, I'm just going to click on the shop now, and guys, links to their social media and their website will be available online through the podcast or YouTube. But the website, now you were a former website designer, so, and you're still doing web design, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I
So,
do that as part of my income. Yes.
yeah. So we have this amazing showcase of not only what you're doing in retirement in quotations, if you guys see the quote retirement.
Right. Right. Right.
But the products here talking about the fiber products. Um, I think a lot of people, let's speak to some of the sheep people out there because there are quite a few. This is a very popular trend. Raising sheep, caring for the sheep, and doing the animal husbandry. Right now it's lambing season for you.
Right.
So speak to that sheep interest and tell us about sheep. What do we need to know?
Well, wow. I'm in no way don't feel like I'm an expert, but they compared to horses, they're actually pretty easy to keep.
Mm,
They don't bump into things, or if they do, they don't hurt themselves quite as easily as horses do. We we gravitated towards sheep as opposed to cattle, or cattle specifically because of their size. They're relatively small. We do have small sheep, and they're pretty docile.
mm,
So, we thought about goats, but all Pete had to do was hear that they might jump on his truck, and that was the end of the goat possibility. Plus, I understand they're escape artists. Sheep don't really want to escape. They don't want to be alone. So they're pretty docile. They're very sweet. Um, they love me. I know when anyone who's a mom who listens to this will appreciate this. When we moved up here and got the sheep, I had teenagers. And teenagers at that point, they they liked me enough, but I wasn't the one that they necessarily wanted to hang out with. So when I would go out in the field and the sheep would come running towards me like they loved me, you have 12 or 18 sheep coming at me. It was just the best feeling.
yeah.
So, but it did take a while to get used to uh, care and feeding. I didn't really know what to do. I read books, I talked to people. One of the most important things I think that I found is networking and finding people. And I have someone that's been helping me a lot lately to refine my shepherding skills in taking care of them, because I would walk into the barn with a bale of hay, and although sheep would come right at me, and basically I would just drop it on the ground and leave, they'd have hay all over them. There would be hay in their fleece. It was just a mess. And so I kind of had to learn how to make it work. We had someone come and cut holes in the wall so I could feed the hay in without having to walk in. It was a carpenter. It was Jared. It was a carpenter, so it was all done very, very well to the barn, to the structure of the barn. And we set up hay feeders, but it was a little bit. It was almost like one thing each year. Every year, I would learn a little bit more about how to take care of them. The first time we lambed, I had no idea. I was stupid enough, I will use that word lightly, but it's probably true, that I had two rams, and I really thought, this is kind of embarrassing. I really thought that the big lamb would gravitate towards the big sheep and the little ram would gravitate towards the little sheep. Yeah, I know. It's really funny, isn't it? And so when
Well, it's because you had some sort of expectation, so naturally, we already know that's not gonna work out. These are animals by all means.
right, right, exactly. And then every ewe was pregnant, I remember saying to the vet, he said, "How many did you breed?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You didn't separate them?" And I just looked at him like, "You're supposed to separate them?" So anyway, needless to say, we had, I think, 10 babies that year. It was fine. And each, like I said, each year I learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
We're very lucky that we have never had any problems lambing. That go out in the morning and there's baby lambs there,
Mm,
and they're all fine. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
yeah,
So, and then we've got this other end of the business, which is the blueberries.
right.
Where's the how do you find the balance between the two? I mean, you're spending an awful lot of time with the sheep and the feeding and water and all that stuff, but then the minute the snow thaws. I mean, doesn't this require a ton of your time? How do you find the balance?
Well, so it does require a lot of time, but the balance is that by the time it's like I'm just getting ready to go out and prune the blueberries, and lambing will be done by that time. So all I really have to do is give the sheep hay until the fields are ready and make sure they have water, and they're pretty self-sufficient. The lambs are growing, they're running around and they're playing, and I can be out with the blueberries, pruning them. We're also at a point now where it's maintenance, although I am expanding. Our neighbors have kind of the same situation that we had, and they've offered I'm clearing out theirs and cleaning up and freeing the blueberries. So I'm going over there and doing that, but I've got plenty of time, to do that, because we're kind of on a schedule now where the sheep are done and now we're into blueberries.
Mhm.
Where it gets a little bit crazy is when it's blueberry picking time.
Mhm.
That because there's farmers markets, there's you pick, there's me out there picking, but that only lasts about 3 or 4 weeks. So
Right.
somehow
So it's just
everything,
just chaos for 3 weeks and then
yeah, yeah. Of course, now we have raspberries, so
you just extended your season.
right,
So
right,
between between the heat, because it does in fact get quite hot up here in New
yes,
Hampshire, and the bugs, because bug season's gonna be right around the corner,
right,
the chores, the weeds, the picking, the farmers markets, which I'm the biggest person to say farmers markets are not for the faint of heart. That is hard
no,
work.
it is,
People at farmers markets, guys, they deserve every penny that they earn at those markets because they are working very hard to be there. And the fact that you're older and you're retired. I mean, how are you keeping all this together? I mean, have you ever just wanted to just say, I quit. I just want to literally retire.
well, I have said that I wanted to quit. I don't know that I have said that I want to retire, because I always come back to, well, what would I do? And I don't clearly don't sit around and do nothing easily. But I will tell you, around this time every year, right before lambing, I'm ready to send all the sheep to the butcher
Right? Winters are
because
very long.
winter is long. It's hard dragging that hay out. It gets icy. I worry about them, even though they've got those nice woolly coats. When it's below zero, I worry about them. So I do get to that point, but then, on a day like today, where it's just starting to get warmer and spring is in the air, and then I start thinking, I can't wait to get out and prune. I really love the work, and I think the diversity of the farm really helps, because it's not like it's just sheep all year long. It's not like it's just blueberries. I have just enough time with one particular product to um, to not get bored, and to keep me and to keep things interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I do want to spend way more time in, and I promise my viewers that we'll probably end up doing a separate segment with you, Nancy,
Uh-huh.
is also behind the scenes. You're doing the farming aspect, but you brought up an important point before we went live. There's also the building the commerce, right? So you're busy doing the chores, you're busy doing the pick your own, you're busy doing the farmers markets, and that's all well and good, but you also have this creative website and this creative engineering going on behind the scenes because you want this to be a profitable business. So,
Right.
kind of share some quick insight with people. We only have a few more minutes left. Um,
Okay.
but just quickly share some insight on that with people.
Well, I realized we're early on, no one was running to our farm to pick blueberries. First of all, there's 4 other blueberry farms just in Sanbornton alone.
Mm.
And so I realized that I had to do something to make if I was going to make money, and I wanted to make money. I mean, I didn't want to make a ton, but I wanted to at least pay for the work that we were doing. And so that one of the first years we had 300 pounds of blueberries that I picked and I couldn't sell because I wasn't connected with the farmers markets. And that's when I got in touch with this company called Genuine Local, who will actually package small batches for farmers. And we came up with this first product, which is the wild blueberry maple topping. I also, because my uncle and my cousin still make maple syrup, and they had an abundance of maple syrup, we combined the two ingredients and made, it's not a jam, it's not a jelly, it's just a topping that can be used on ice cream and yogurt. And it's just maple syrup and blueberries. Those are the only two ingredients. And that was the first product we did. And it was a big hit. It was a big hit. Now it was hard because I had to get out there and sell, and I hate to sell. It's just my least favorite thing to do, but in a way it kind of sold itself. And so once I kind of got the feel for how that was working, we started doing more. And this Christmas, we did gift boxes, which Erin is showing now with syrup. We've incorporated some teas from another local farmer and other maple products. And we did really, really well. Pancake mixes and crepe mixes and fruit crumble, all kinds of things that that we've added to our store to kind of, and our slogan is get a little farm in your life. And it's a way to kind of help bring people to the farm. One of the things that I knew about living in an urban environment compared to where we are now is that people really long to be outside and in this lifestyle that we're living. And so my goal with these products was to bring that to people.
Right.
And yeah, and so that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks great. I know the New Hampshire Farm to Door website has been selling the product too, and it's done very well. And I love it. I make mixed drinks out of it. And you know, if you need any drink recipes to add to your add to your website, you let me know.
Right.
So I do want to end the session with you. Where do you think the future of your business is gonna go? Do you have some secret itinerary or plans? What do you see?
Well, I'd like to continue to um, expand on our berries, as far as the physical products that we offer, but to also expand on our online presence and incorporate. I think what we found is that the gift boxes and baskets are kind of our little niche, and then I can combine our products with other people's products. And so to bring more people in that have that same flavor, that same kind of product product that they carry,
Yeah.
and just see where it goes, to continue to grow. Yeah,
Yeah.
and do more farmers markets. Farmers markets, like you said, are hard, but I do love them because I love connecting with people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, last year was the first year I've done one, and it was just one farmer's market. And now I'm doing 3 and
yeah.
tons of these little pop-up things. I mean, 'tis the season for the farmer. Would you agree?
Right. Yes. I think it was a really good year, and it was actually a good year for you pick last year too, because people wanted to get out of the cities and just be outside. And we did it by appointment, so we only had one family at a time. So people basically had the farm all to themselves, and they loved it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah,
Well, you know, to the viewers that are listening or watching through our YouTube channel, you know, talk about bringing a whole new culture and experience into this farming and agricultural setting. It's not always about feeding and mucking. It really is about community. It's about networking. It's about building a culture. And Nancy, I think you've done a fantastic job with this. And the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have on the commerce end. Again, I promise my viewers that we will touch on this topic more because it is And it's so essential today more than it has ever been before with social media and online networking. So we hope that Nancy, you'll find some time to sit down with us and answer some questions about that and have some great
Sure.
dialogue in that.
Sure, that would be great. I would love that.
So any last minute things that you want to share with our viewers?
Um, no, farming really is hard work, but it's great. It's so rewarding on and more than just the financial. Just to be outside, to be with nature for me, is just it's a real gift, and to be able to live this lifestyle, and I'm grateful to be able to share it with everyone, who comes to pick or buys our product or just gets a little sense of farming, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you that want to get a little sense of her farm, berriesandfleece.com is the website you want to go to. There are links to her social media accounts. You can see videos, pictures. You can shop online. She's now offering shipping for her products as well. So, anybody listening that's not in the New England area, berriesandfleece.com, this wild berry farm in Sanbornton, New Hampshire. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Erin. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Bye bye.